people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Last night in Costa Rica, reigning IBF minimum weight champion Yo-Costa Valle was in action as the main event of a Golden Boy promotion show, the unification match we talked about here on the channel with Yo-Costa and Nguyen.
The prediction stuck. Yo-Costa won the fight. Yo-Costa won on points.
Although she did it in much more dominant fashion than I originally anticipated, than I originally expected. I have to be honest. When I first laid eyes on Yo-Costa Valle, saw the footage of her in action, I wasn't taken by this fighter, taken by this champion. I felt that if she were to fight Tina Rupprecht in a second fight, she likely would lose the rematch. I felt that she didn't stand much chance against Senicia Estrada.
A lot has changed since then, and I have to admit,
She is a better fighter, a much better fighter now than when I first saw her. She's made some recent additions to her corner, trained by Gloria Alvarado.
Coach G, as she's called, has given us a much better Yo-Costa Valle than the one I've seen in previous years.
Let's talk about what we saw in the fight and what saw Yo-Costa Valle become this division's unified minimum weight champion. From the opening round to the final round, Yo-Costa Valle was consistently better, busier, and sharper than Nguyen.
Very much flustered with Yo-Costa Valle's activity.
Movement. Early in the fight, you saw Yo-Costa Valle putting punches together, salvos of punches in sequence, mixing in body shots.
Going upstairs, downstairs.
Outworking the Vietnamese champion, being better in the pocket whilst doing so, showing good offensive and defensive highlights, getting under and around Nguyen shots, slipping, bobbing, and weaving.
Gloria Alvarado has turned Yo-Costa Valle into a more well-balanced fighter.
And the story of the fight, round after round, was Yo-Costa Valle thoroughly out-hustling and out-muscling the Vietnamese champion.
I had Yo-Costa Valle winning 10 out of 10 rounds in this thing.
10 out of 10 rounds, pitching a shutout in front of a sellout crowd that was very much behind Yo-Costa Valle.
Very much engaged in the action. Whenever Yo-Costa put punches together, you could hear the roar from the crowd.
Whether it was a big right hand upstairs or a gut-busting body shot downstairs, you could very much see that the crowd was invested.
You could see it, you could hear it. I knew that Yo-Costa had some celebrity in Costa Rica.
That she had amassed a profile over time there. The Nicaraguan-born, Costa Rican-based, Costa Rican-raised fighter.
I knew she had some celebrity. She appeared on the Costa Rican version of Dancing with the Stars.
And having watched the broadcast, it's now my understanding that she regularly sells out in Costa Rica. Given the reaction from the crowd and their energy, it almost doesn't make sense for Yo-Costa Valle to fight anywhere else, short of being cut a fat check, a fat fucking check.
A big one. It doesn't make sense for her to travel.
She is a bona fide headliner in her own backyard, a bona fide star in her own neck of the woods, and it doesn't make sense for her to fight anywhere else unless
somebody's gonna give her a lot of fucking money to do it.
And the improvement that she's showing now that she's got Coach G, Coach Gloria Alvarado, in her corner, I have to be honest. Initially, when I first saw Yo-Costa Valle, I didn't figure that out of the 4 champions at this weight, she would be the first to unify. I was expecting it to be Senicia Estrada, who was already in...
She had already inked a pact with Golden Boy Promotions, and I was expecting Senicia to be the first champion to unify at this weight.
I really didn't think it was going to be Yo-Costa, and I didn't anticipate that she would start showing this kind of improvement. Little things, subtle things, like going to the body early to sap the other girl's energy later on.
She did a really good job of mixing in body shots into those combinations at the start of the fight, and they showed up.
It was after 3 or 4 rounds you could see that the Vietnamese champion was already starting to slow down. Those body shots were starting to wear on her early, and I have to admit, she showed a good chin and good conditioning. She took the punches well, but they very much sapped her energy reserves, or they seemed to. She was unable to keep up with Yo-Costa Valle, who was a lot busier and lighter on her feet.
Better inside the pocket, better outside of the pocket.
Better all around. better punch selection, better variety of punches. For every one punch Nguyen threw, Yo-Costa threw about 3 or 4.
She picked her punches well, some of which sailed around the guard, some of which penetrated it.
And busted through it. Post-fight, immediately after the fight, once the judges' scorecards were read, based on the aesthetic of the match, we all knew who was going to get the decision.
Yo-Costa was asked what she wants to do, and she's got unification matches on the brain.
She wants to get her old buddy, reigning WBC minimum weight champion of Germany, Tina Rupprecht, in the ring. Tina Rupprecht is one of 2 women that has dished out a loss to Yo-Costa Valle. Tina was one, Naoko Fujioka was the other. And there's no shame in losing to those fighters. Yo-Costa Valle dropped a decision to Tina Rupprecht some years ago. Years later, based on what I saw last night, and the effect that Coach G is having on Yo-Costa's overall game, her overall repertoire, I actually like her chances. I didn't always feel that way, but based on how things are looking now, I actually like Yo-Costa Valle's chances to avenge that decision loss from years ago against Tina Rupprecht, because here today, Tina Rupprecht has only fought once in the last 2 years, and it's been well over a year since she last fought.
She hasn't fought at all this year, and if her very next fight ends up being against Yo-Costa...
Yo-Costa Valle has already fought 3 times. 3 times this year alone. 3 times last year. She will be a sharper fighter the night of the fight if she can get Tina to travel, if she can get Tina in the ring. The question is,
Tina Rupprecht doesn't have the same level of celebrity in Germany that Yo-Costa has in Costa Rica.
And Tina Rupprecht isn't with a major promotional outfit that has a broadcast partner to broadcast her fights. Yo-Costa does. She's with Golden Boy, and her fights, they're on DAZN.
So the money to finance the fight is there, the platform is there.
But is the willingness there? The willingness to travel? There's also Senicia Estrada, the subject of her WBA minimum weight title, to be addressed now that she's not with Golden Boy Promotions anymore. She's with Top Rank. She's going to be fighting on ESPN moving forward.
Bit of an issue there.
I'd say it is. Golden Boy is invested in Yo-Costa Valle, and ESPN and Top Rank, they're very much invested in Senicia. So who's going to cross over? Is anybody going to cross over?
I think Valle versus Rupprecht 2 comparatively is an easier fight to make than Valle versus Estrada.
In men's flyweight news, per tweet from Michael Benson, the IBF have now officially ordered Sonny Edwards to defend his IBF flyweight world title versus former IBF light flyweight world champion Felix Alvarado next. It appears the Julio Cesar Martinez unification fight will not be happening next. I mean, if you needed further indication that that unification match is dead in the water, this is it.
It's done. It's not happening.
That's the question. Some speculate that Sonny Edwards may have been a part of 600 individuals banned from entering into the United States due to tenuous associations with alleged cartel king Daniel Kinahan. Some suspect that that might be why this fight fell apart. Others suggest that Julio Cesar Martinez, that guy was supposed to fight McWilliams Arroyo at least 2-3 times now, and every single time it was Julio that withdrew. It was Julio that was experiencing issues,
He was.
showing instability.
At this time, we don't know exactly why that fight fell apart.
What we do know is that Sonny is now under orders to face Felix Alvarado, who sports professional record of 38 wins, 2 losses with no draws, 33 knockouts, having never been stopped in 40 professional contests. He saw action at least once this year, 2 times last year. So this ain't a guy that's got ring rust and cobwebs that he needs to shake off. He's an experienced fighter, an experienced veteran, and a former champion.
Sonny Edwards, if you're familiar with him, you'll know his bread and butter is his boxing.
Not an artillery guy. He's not a guy who goes in there and wins fights through strength of arms or activity. For the most part, Sonny Edwards is a mobile, stick-and-move outside jabber, a pure boxer, a counter-puncher. That's what he is. And Felix Alvarado, having never been stopped, not once, in 40 professional contests, 40 professional bouts, you don't really get the sense that Sonny can be the first one to do it.
Power isn't Sonny's calling card.
Far from it. He fights on the fly. And the main characteristic of fighters that fight on the fly is because they're not setting their feet and sitting on their punches.
They're not drawing power from the ground up, thus there's not that much power on them.
If Sonny Edwards beats this guy, if he does, it'll likely be on points. It'll likely be by way of a points decision.
The question now is, where does the show land? Who's going to be the broadcaster for this thing? Because Sonny, last I checked, he's with Probellum, ain't he?
I feel like the likeliest location for this fight, the likeliest location for this show, would have to be either the United Kingdom or out there in Dubai, where Sonny's last fight took place, the fight with Wasim. The fight with Muhammad Wasim that took place in March of this year, earlier this year, that's the only fight Sonny's had this year. He fought 2 times last year, only once this year. There's still time to schedule this fight with Felix Alvarado.
There's still time to do it before this year is out.
Now, both boys have seen action in the last 12 months, so neither one of them has any ring rust or cobwebs that they need to shake off. Nobody's an old man here, nobody's an old-timer. Sonny's a very spry 26 years old.
Felix Alvarado is 33.
33 years old, having not lost a fight since 2014. Lost a decision at the hands of Juan Carlos Rebeco.
He's been on a 20-fight winning streak ever since.
Having stopped 5 of his last 6 opponents. 5.
Definitely a cut above Muhammad Wasim, the last guy that Sonny fought. This guy's a former champion.
With a hell of a lot more professional contests, a hell of a lot more professional bouts than Sonny Edwards himself. This guy's had 40 fucking fights, hasn't been stopped yet.
38 wins and 2 losses, with 33 of those wins coming by way of knockout.
To Sonny Edwards' spotless, unblemished record of 18 wins, no losses, no draws, with 4 knockouts. Looks to me like Sonny Edwards has his work cut out for him.
A very risky fight and proof positive that not all mandatory challengers are created equal.
Sometimes the mandatory challenger by way of the IBF is a guy like Errol Spence Jr. Sometimes it's a guy like Carlos Ocampo. This time, it's a guy like Felix Alvarado.
The 30-day negotiation period has kicked off as of yesterday, Thursday.
And you know how this works. Sonny has to either fight this guy or forfeit the title. And finally, in men's super lightweight news, former champion Regis Prograis doubts Teofimo Lopez will find success at 140. I don't see it.
You know that Teofimo very recently returned to action against Mexico's own Pedro Campas.
Let me stop that guy. He did what he was supposed to do, said Prograis during an interview with The Boxing Voice. I think he fought a confidence fight to get his confidence back. As Prograis alludes to, Lopez was attempting to put behind the nightmarish memories of his previous ring experience after scoring an unlikely upset against Vasil Lomachenko in October of 2020. Lopez found himself on the wrong end of the upset cart against George Kambosos Jr. roughly 1 year later. Unwilling to squeeze down to the 135-pound weight limit any longer, Lopez has begun his new journey as a full-fledged super lightweight.
And he scored a knockout in his last fight. He knocked out Pedro Campas. He had to work for it.
Regis has his doubts. The skills, in Prograis' opinion, are ostensible. However, considering the success Campa enjoyed against the former champion, Prograis is convinced that Lopez will struggle mightily as he continues to move up the 140-pound ladder. That dude was hitting him, and that dude is nowhere close to some of the bigger level 140s. I feel like the bigger people at 140, like real size. I know Tio. I've been around him a bunch of times. Tio is kind of little. I could be wrong, but I just don't see it coming together at 140.
I don't blame Regis for saying what he's saying because I've seen a lot of people say that.
I saw a lot of people saying that immediately after the Campas fight, after evaluating how it was Teofimo Lopez looked. However, I'm choosing to give Teofimo a grace period to show me more as a super lightweight, because I remember when Oscar Valdez moved up from 126 up to 130, when he took on Adam Lopez and was floored. I think he had 2 fights before he ended up taking on Miguel Berchelt for the WBC title. And Oscar didn't look good in his first 2 fights as a 130-pounder. It wasn't until the Berchelt fight that it all came together.
You see what I'm getting at? That when Oscar first moved up, he didn't look great right away.
And the same might be true for Teofimo Lopez, who very recently moved up to 140. And no, he didn't look great, but I'll tell you what, he looked better at his first fight at 140 than Oscar looked at his first fight at 130. So maybe we should give Teofimo a little bit more time.
Time to show us more of what he looks like as a 140-pound fighter, because this is a better weight for him.
He can't make 135 pounds safely anymore. He was busting at the seams ahead of the Vasil Lomachenko fight, so I can only imagine how difficult it was for him afterwards. After that.
Well, I understand what Regis means when he says that Teofimo Lopez, he's really not a big guy. You know, he might have been big as far as lightweights go. Lightweights, 135-pounders, but super lightweights.
As far as 140-pounders go, Teofimo is on the smaller, much smaller end of the spectrum. There's some big kids up there, some real big kids up there, but you know,
two-division champion of Puerto Rico, Jose Pedraza, he moved up to 140.
He's been up there for some time now, had 2 or 3 fights. He took on former champion Jose Ramirez not that long ago, you know, before the Comey fight that he just had, the Comey fight that was ruled a draw. He took on Jose Ramirez, former champion, guy with a lot of size. He's about 5'10", maybe 5'11", at 140 pounds. That's a big guy for a super lightweight, it is. And funnily enough, Jose Pedraza, he didn't look out of place. He actually flustered Jose Ramirez at times, made him look basic, made him look limited,
And remember, Jose Pedraza used to campaign as low as 130 pounds. He's at 140 now.
And when he was in there with a statuesque former champion that had a lot of size on him, perhaps a lot of power, he didn't look out of place. He didn't look bad. He didn't get outclassed. In fact, he showed better feet than Ramirez did, showed better maneuvering ability, which I think is what kept him in that fight. So if Jose Pedraza can look all right as a 140-pounder, having campaigned as low as 130 pounds, well, we shouldn't count out Teofimo. Teofimo's a little bigger than Jose Pedraza.
I'm not trying to sell you a dream, because Jose Pedraza did lose that Ramirez fight. He
He
did.
didn't look half bad in that fight, but he did still lose that fight. All I'm saying is that if a guy
What guy?
who used to campaign as low as 130 pounds can go up there to 140 and go the distance with a Jose Ramirez, well, maybe Teofimo Lopez could do a little better.
Maybe he could. Maybe he could get himself an alphabet title.
I wouldn't count him out. Not based on the Pedro Campas fight, because that was a confidence-building fight after all, and it probably has helped to build his confidence. He's probably now in a better headspace.
He's probably now in a better headspace than he was in going into that fight.
And let's just be completely honest here. As deep as the talent pool is at 140 pounds, there are political boundary lines that determine which fights will happen and which fights won't happen. It's not necessarily like Teofimo, a lightweight that has since moved up to super lightweight, has got to go through this entire gauntlet of 140-pound fighters. A good number of them he might not even have to deal with. Gary Antoine Russell and Subriel Matias, Jeremias Ponce, promising 140-pound fighters. They're over there on the PBC side of things. Teofimo's not going to bump into them.
No, he might bump into Jose Ramirez or Arnold Barboza.
Or the winner of Taylor versus Catterall, but he doesn't have to fight all of these guys. He doesn't.